Good morning and welcome to my blog, Wisdom for Today. So, since it's the end of the month, I want to tell you about a person in history who affects our Christian life today. And today I want to talk to you about Florence Nightingale. She was also known as the Lady with the Lamp. Florence Nightingale was born into a very wealthy Quaker family in 1820 in England. And the family was well enough off that they expected the young girls to do nothing but to educate themselves and to read and to write, and then to find a very wealthy husband and to participate in society. But they did go to church, and the Unitarian church that they went to was slightly puritanical. And maybe the parents thought that Florence wasn't listening to the sermons, but she was, and she disdained the wealth and society as well. And her mother was often frustrated with her because when the young women would go into the kitchen to talk about recipes and perhaps courtships, she wanted to stay out with the men and discuss philosophy. And one day, when she was reading her Bible and praying in the garden, she heard a call from God that she was to care for the sick. Now, in those days, the only people who cared for the sick were fallen women, or women who were coming out of prostitution, sex work. And well-bred women had no business being there. But she would escape from her house late at night to care for the sick. She knew a little bit of biology, but not enough to do anything more than make sure that the floors were clean and that wounds were cleaned and bandaged properly. But that did a great deal in those days. And then her family, when they found out about this, forbade her ever to go into that profession again and kind of locked her up for a while, which caused her to enter into a deep depression. And finally, her father relented, talking his wife, her mother, into letting her go to work with the sick, even to let her go to the Crimean War to tend for the soldiers there. That was a patriotic duty, so surely it wouldn't be disrespectful. When she got there, she found out that the hospital was built upon a sewage, and there were rats and roaches and maggots inside the young men's wounds. And so the first thing she did is she got the women together whom she had solicited to come with her, and she cleaned the floors, and she moved the hospital, and she relentlessly nagged for the supplies she needed to keep clean bandages on. And physicians noticed that amputees were less when wounds were cleaned, but that didn't get her much popularity. In fact, many of the soldiers and the doctors didn't want her around. They found her nagging irritating, and they found her to be uneducated. When she returned to England after the Crimean War, she was known as the Lady with the Lamp. She was a lady that would go around to each soldier's bed at night and pray with them and ask them if they needed to have a letter written home. And her popularity soared. She became a type of celebrity. She didn't really enjoy that status until she realized she could use it for good. And she used it to create bills that would pass before Parliament that would demand that the sick be treated better. And eventually she was made the head of the Royal Society of Medical Services. And she trained other women in this technique of cleaning wounds and cleaning hospitals and caring for the spiritual and physical needs of young men and women who were ill. So what I like about Florence Nightingale is this. She had some very strong expectations that were put on her. And those voices were given to her that had those expectations, that gave her those expectations, were given to her by people whom she loved, people who had cared for her very dearly, her mother and her father. And yet she listened to the voice of God above them all. I praise God that she did that. And many nursing texts will quote, will state that Florence Nightingale was the beginning of nursing, along with her contemporary Clara Barton, who worked in the United States. Now, before Clara Barton and Florence Nightingale, there was a woman by the name of Clara of Assisi. Now, she existed about 300 years before that, and she was one of the first nuns, and she felt it was her job to care for the sick. And just like Clara Barton And Florence Nightingale, she started by just keeping their wounds clean and praying with them and writing letters home, and it made all the difference. These three women remind me that I just have to do the little bit that God has called me to do. I might not be able to solve everything, but I can solve something if I listen to God's voice and apply common sense to difficult situation. I don't know what you'll face this week, but whatever situation you face, I pray that you'll feel the hand of God directing you, and you will hear his voice speaking to you. I look forward to seeing you on church this Sunday. God's blessings, and have a good day.